Welcome to Bon Jovi Discussions. Today I have a very special guest today, Daniel Parinello. How you doing?
Very good, Jerry. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for coming on.
No problem. This is going to be fun. I know it will be.
Yeah, we recently just connected on Twitter. You messaged me a couple weeks ago, and
Yep. Hmm.
I want to I want you to be able to introduce what we're going to talk about today because what we're about to talk about has such a huge monumental part in John's history of who he became. So I'll let you introduce what we're talking about today.
Sure. So, like Jerry said, my name is Dan Parinello. I grew up in a little town called Sayreville, New Jersey, on a street called Robin Hood Drive. And if any of you know the town and the street, of course, that's where JBJ is from. And my father, Al Parinello, or as some of you might know him as AP95, was John's mentor, guitar teacher, and very, very good friend for too many years to count. So, but that's how Jerry and I met. There was a post on Twitter, and I hashtagged AP95, and Jerry liked the post, and the rest is here. And now we're here together. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and it's going to be really cool talking about my dad.
Absolutely. And with all respect, I want you to be able to talk more about your dad than
Sure.
me,
Hmm.
obviously. But I'll kind of just teach or if you want to actually, I think it'd be better for you to do it.
Sure.
How John and your dad kind of came
I'll
connected.
absolutely do. I'll do the whole thing. Absolutely, I have no problem with that.
I want to do it out of respect for you and your
Sure.
dads.
Sure. So in the beginning, as you know, has been written in many books, but in the beginning, we all grew up right on Robin Hood Drive. John, it was 16. We were 21. And my father, who by day was a detailer, he worked kind of like architecture, drafting. He designed reinforcing structures for large buildings and other structures. But at night, he was an entertainer. And to help support the family, he also taught guitar. So John's parents and my parents were extremely close because they lived across the street. John's mother, Carol, and my mother's name was Sharon. They often hung out. Both of them had a love of which would be called DIY these days, arts and crafts. And one day, while they were all hanging out, the four of them, Carol said to my father, "Can you teach me guitar?" And my father's like, "Sure, I could teach anybody. I teach a couple of kids here in the neighborhood. I'll give you a shot." So at this time, I'm going to guess John was around 13, maybe 14 at this point. Back when those things happen, you don't really take a mental note because you don't realize how it's
Right.
going to explode. So, so Carol was supposed to come over and take lessons, and there's a door ring at the doorbell, and there's little John, and he's like, "My mom can't make her lessons, so she sent me." So John and my dad went down in the basement. Now, once again, all of us were friends. John and Anthony. Anthony was my brother's age, or is my brother's age. John, obviously, a little bit older. Maddie was younger than me. He was actually close to my sister. They were the same age. So we were all friends. Everybody played in the neighborhood. We had a great neighborhood in Sayreville. It was such a great place to grow up. And so that first day, it really was just like, plucking strings. It wasn't anything fancy or anything like that. And, I know everyone has heard the story about the guitar getting thrown down the stairs because he liked the way that sounded. And that did happen, but that was prior to my father. So John left that day. And then it was like a week later. And Carol didn't come for a lesson again. So she sent John over again. At this point, my father said, "Are you serious? Do you really want to do this?" And he's like, "Sure, I definitely want to do it." And so that's where House came in. And because he asked John, "What song do you want to learn?" And he showed him. And my father never read a note of music. It was all done by ear. Um, uh, Going a little off track here, or side track, I should say. My father taught himself how to play guitar when he was hospitalized as a 12, I guess, Renee, was he 12 or 13? It was 9, actually.
Wow.
He was in the hospital. Was that the rheumatic fever? Yeah, he had rheumatic fever. And he asked my grandfather, he said, "Can we get you anything?" And he said, "Yeah, get him a guitar." And this thing was, and he had it up until, he passed away. We always had that guitar, and the strings were so far away from the fretboard. It was like, that's one of the reasons why my dad had these massive hands. And they were so strong because he taught himself how to play. His idols were Dwayne Eddy, Chet Atkins, stuff like that. So that's how he taught John. And he said, let's play it over and over and over again. And as some people who play music, when repetition is, the mother of invention. So, and then he left. So the following week, it wasn't going to be Carol. It was going to be John. And John came over and he says, okay, let's play it. And John did not know it. John was fumbling around the whole thing. And, my father basically, and once again, none of us were down there, but we heard the story. John would leave and my father would come up and talk to my mom and shake his head. And he's like, if this kid doesn't know it next week, he goes, I got people that I can teach, that could take this lesson. So I told him he better be serious. So sure enough, my mom and Carol got on the phone and they were talking about it. And sure enough, the following week he came back and he knew it. And he said, he goes, all right, I'm ready to go again. He goes, no, let's wait. And eventually Boys Are Back in Town came up. And John really loved that classic rock, obviously the Animals, Tin Lizzy. He was so influenced by Southside and Bruce and that whole Jersey Shore scene. So that's how, that relationship started. And, throughout the years, John obviously never missed a lesson, never missed a lesson. And, it was a couple months after that where John started, I'm going to get a band. The lost art of finding a band in high school, I should call this. That should be the name of the book. Because these kids, these days, they don't want to start a band. All they want to do is play with their computers. So John got a bunch of neighborhood kids together, and he said that we're going to, play some music. And, hey, Al, can you come and help us? So my father would go to John's band rehearsals, and he would work sound for them. And there were concerts down at Borough Hall in Sayreville. My father would work there. And on a flatbed truck at the Little League field, John would be up there singing. And my wife is doing such a great job of helping me out here. One of the greatest things was John was very similar to Jim Morrison, and maybe he was influenced there, but John would not look at the crowd. He had, everybody has seen him live. You know how he jumps around and he loves playing to the crowd because you know what? He's one of the best front men there is. But he didn't do that in the beginning. He was a very shy kid up there. He could sing, he could write, he could do whatever he wanted to, but he was a little shy. So Dad helped him break out of that shell. And, we have photos in my brother's house. John singing with Bruce at the Stone Pony when John was 16. Wow. And I mean, some of the experiences John had, but it was the one thing that always stuck out was the first person he called the next day, or the first person he come knock on the door. It was my father. He's like, oh, you're not going to believe what happened last night. You're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it. Oh, listen, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. And it's hard to describe what my dad was to John. He was just, the best way I could say it, he was out. And, he always called my mother Mrs. Parinello, but he called my father Al, which was really neat because how much they were friends, and it was like all about Al. And one of the greatest side stories here is if anyone follows Bon Jovi, they know who Skid Row is. And Dave also was a student of my father's, Dave the Snake Sabo. Yes. And this is the best part of that story. John and Dave were friends for years. Dave was a couple years younger than John. John graduated in 80. Dave graduated in 82 from Sayreville War Memorial. And but they were friends in the neighborhood. They were everybody, all the long hairs were all friends. And so he said to John, he goes, "Can you teach me how to play guitar?" So I interviewed Snake many years ago, and this is the line. I have it on cassette in storage, but the line is very, very simple. John taught me for 2 weeks, and then he taught me Al's phone number. and that's when Dave became a student of my father's. And obviously, Skid Row at one point, we're also one of the biggest bands on the planet. So it actually, it's really, yeah, listen, obviously being John's mentor is really cool for us, you know, to honor my dad, but he taught 2 rock stars. And, you know, the odds of that are kind of slim. So it makes us feel really good and really blessed that Al was in our lives for so many years. And that's the beginning. It's hard to even say, you know, the explosion happened. I guess it was the late 80s. John was living at home up until a certain point. Then he actually got a house with the guys during the second album. And I don't know if you know this, Jared, and I know you're the biggest Die Hard fan I've met. That's for sure. But do you know the original title for the second album?
For 7800?
Yes.
There was 3 different ones.
Well, actually, it's a variation of 7800. That's the key here.
Ooh, I'm stumped.
Okay, so when John brought that to the, you know, to the masses, and, you know, we did a whole little thing at school because he gave us the 3 names. It was Out of Control, it was Into the Fire, and it was
Into the Fire. That's the one I was thinking of.
Right. And the third option was 7048 Fahrenheit, because that is the temperature that rock melts. Right. And that's why he went with it. And the record company says that's too confusing, so just go with 7800. And that's where 7800 came from.
Yeah, I knew. So Into the Fire was the one I was saying, because there's a song that's on 7800, you know, Into the Fire. Yes. Yep. And that was almost, you know, was going to be the single and everything, and then that got scrapped and became An Out of Love, and but that's interesting.
Another basement moment I just like to throw out there, and this was a good one. This was prior to the first album, and it was as we call it the Happy Days moment. And why is it called the Happy Days moment? Well, if you're a Happy Days fan, which I am actually a diehard Happy Days fan, I'm a little older than Jerry. And there was an episode where Richie Cunningham was friends with a rock star by the name of Johnny Fish and the Finns, some guy who was in the band Johnny Fish and the Finns. And they were playing locally on the show, like wherever, in the town that the Cunninghams lived. They didn't have a place to stay, so they stayed at Richie's house, and he could not tell a soul. So even though he had been telling everybody for years that he knew him, nobody believed him, because when it was time to meet him, he couldn't come forward. He couldn't bring people to his house. He couldn't tell. It was a big secret. So back in the early 80s, and this is why I call it the Happy Days moment, back in the early 80s, John called my father. And he said, "Al, we have a problem. I can't get any studio time, and we're opening for ZZ Top. Is there any way we can practice at the house?" And my father's like, "Sure, no problem. When are you coming over? Blah, blah, blah." So they all parked at John's house across the street. And they walked across the street. Now, once again, at this point, they're not really big. Well, in Sayreville, they're huge. Everybody knew who Bon Jovi was. So it was right, like I said, it was right during the first album. And we were sworn to secrecy. We couldn't tell any of our friends. We couldn't tell anybody. So as irony would have it, remember, no cell phones back then, so there was no invitation here. We're all in the house, and we're just sitting there, and we're listening to the band downstairs, and it's so great, so amazing.
Oh man, what a gift to have.
Yeah, it was insane. So, so sure enough, there's a ring at the doorbell, and it's my brother's girlfriend and her friend, and they were not invited. They said, "Hey, we're in the neighborhood. We figured we just stop by." So they're sitting in the living room with us, and it was about 15, 20 minutes later, we're watching television, And his girlfriend looks at him and she goes, "Man, your dad's band is really good." And we just sat there, and the music stops. You hear a lot of talking and stuff like that. It was about an hour and a half they were rehearsing. And sure enough, there comes Richie, Alec, Tico, Dave, and John comes up with my dad at the end. And the girls are just sitting there, their jaws are dropped to the ground. And we just sat there with, and the next day at school, everybody's like, "Why didn't you tell us they were at your house?" I'm like, I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't tell anybody. So,
Wow.
but yeah, John rehearsing for an MSG show in our basement was one of the coolest moments
And,
of that whole thing.
and obviously, you know how iconic that MSG show is because that was when Richie's guitar,
Yep.
I think it was the amp that blacked out, and then
Yep.
John had to give Richie his guitar, and that's awesome.
Yeah, and it was so neat. It really was.
I just have to reevaluate this because this is so cool. Can you imagine being in your living room and underneath? And I know Bon Jovi is just still starting out here, but
Yeah.
still having a soon to be the biggest rock band in the '80s underneath you in your basement practicing for a Madison Square Garden show.
Yep.
I can't get over that. That's incredible.
Like I said, we look back on a lot of things, and you know, there are certain moments that happened between John and my father that are unbelievable. And almost like pinch me moments. You can't believe they actually happened. One of my prized possessions, it's inside, and John's first recording. Do you know what that was?
Are you talking about the Power Station session? Or are you talking about with the
His first recording that he ever sold, that was ever sold with John's voice on it?
Runaway?
No, it was Christmas in the Stars.
Oh yeah. Okay, I thought you were talking about the Power Station session.
Oh yeah, Power Station stuff I actually have on CD. I'd rather not get into the whole Tony thing. That's a very sticky subject, and
Sure.
out of respect for John, I would not get into that. But
Absolutely, yeah.
so Christmas in the Stars. So he comes over the house and he hands my father the record, and he said, "Look what I did." And he shot on the back, R2D2, "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." We had to listen to that song probably 30 times a day. And in John's name is written JOHN BONGIOVI, his proper name. And so, at the time it was, nothing. I mean, this was John's first recording because he was at the Power Station. That's where it was recorded. And they got him to sing because he had been rehearsing there when he wasn't sweeping floors. And he signed it in blue ballpoint pen. It says, "Al, I guess this is a start." I have that record in my room. It is obviously the only one in existence with that signature, and he signed it with his real spelling of his name.
Oh my
And that is like, I have a lot of collectibles from other things. I'm a Buccaneer fan, as you can see, and who John also played at the Buccaneers Super Bowl after they won in San Diego in 2003. So no, I have other sports cards and other things, collectibles, but that is my prized possession because there is nothing on this planet that is as singular as that. That is literally one of one. So
That's something you have to hand down generation to
oh
generation.
yeah, that's going nowhere. That's going to be, one day, who knows, maybe I'll donate it to the Hall of Fame. Who knows?
Yeah. That's huge. I bought a copy of that, and I feel stupid for saying this, but I'm a huge Bon Jovi collector, and this is years ago. But I'm a huge collector, and I know how valuable something like that is in the collection. Obviously not signed like yours is, but I have a copy of that album, and I spent like $500 for that.
Yeah, it's very collectible. It's very collectible, and that signature. I watch Pawn Stars all the time, and I laugh because there was the one episode with the Bon Jovi stuff, and they're saying, it's not worth that much. I'm like, you people are nuts. I said, So I just laugh at some of those things, and I just think about, if I walked into anywhere and so showed them that record, and they, because like I said, that signature doesn't exist. I mean, his JBJ signature is much different than that one. And it's just neat. It's just really neat. But like I said, that's what he did with my dad. Anything he did, he immediately came over. Another couple of things. I got the gold record for for the second album that was given to my father. It's inside. We have that on the wall inside. Um, and the other thing I have is I have the 2 final demos of Keep the Faith on cassette, and I also have my father's favorite album, which was Blaze of Glory.
Oh,
So
I was going to ask what his favorite album
yeah,
was.
my father felt John's writing on Blaze of Glory was second to none. Um, Obviously, the song Blaze of Glory is his favorite, or he always said that, and it was having that tape also means a lot to me. And my brother and I, we try to distribute things to each other, because my mom is gone, as well as my sister, and obviously my dad. So we're trying to keep those memories alive, and our kids will have them as well. And there are a few things that we lost along the way, and you and I talked about the one that's currently with John, with my father, excuse me. Like he mentioned on Oprah, uh, his slippery when wet necklace is with my father at the muzzle, in his casket. And um, it was John was a pallbearer, so was Dave from Skid Row. They were pallbearers. Um, you know, really another story, and it's actually public, so I don't. It's not really a. Um, I don't like to, try and say too much, but John was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, when my father passed. So he came back, he came home for that. And he went back to Tennessee, and it's the Chattanooga Free Press. And I got to figure, I have a copy of it. And, Jared, if you ever want to look this up, like I said, it was right after my dad died. So you think in September 95, probably I'd say maybe like September 20th, 95. John played a concert in Chattanooga, and on stage, he said, I just came back from saying goodbye to someone who made more to me than anything. And he dedicated Blaze of Glory that night to my father, right on stage in Chattanooga.
Oh, that's right. I
Yeah.
forgot all about that.
Yeah,
That's
he was in
right.
Chattanooga, Tennessee on tour. He got the call. He didn't make it back in time. My dad, he almost made it. And, but like I said, yeah, he dedicated Blaze of Glory that night to my father.
Oh my God. I don't know. It's just a side note here. I don't know if you have it already, but I might have that audio recording.
Okay.
And if
Yeah,
you
that'd be pretty cool.
you might already have it, but
I
if
do
you
not have the audio. I only have the printed copy from the newspaper, the Chattanooga Free Press. Because I actually sent them, because John had mentioned he was going to do something. So I immediately, and like I said, back then, the internet was dial up, so it was on literally a printed, like almost like a typewriter copy. And they explained that they didn't have the article. Oh yeah, it was the article, but it was typed out. It wasn't actually the article from the paper. I would love to get it. Actually, I would love to get that newspaper, but these things are probably on microfiche out there or something. So,
yeah.
but yeah, but that was like the coolest. I have some fun moments with me and John. John on stage in Philly. He called my name out. It was actually quite amusing because I was on a blind date and she didn't think I knew him. So, oops, I guess she was wrong. And
She'd be like,
yeah, well, listen, I'm a much happier man now anyway. So, but that moment, him, dedicating that to my dad, and obviously, the Hall of Fame speech and everything, he knows, and that those two had a relationship that literally is very, very hard to explain, and it's a beautiful relationship. There were so many moments when John received his gold record. They were opening for Rat when the gold record was awarded, and so they were about to. So Derek Schulman, I think his name is Derek Schulman, yeah, from Polygram Records, called John and the band up, and then the band stepped away, and he called my father up, and there is a picture in existence of of John, my father, and Derek Schulman when John received his first ever gold record. That was at the Meadowlands, Brendan Byrne Arena back then, when they opened for Rat. Um, he attended John's wedding party, South Street Seaport. And here's another little tidbit. My father is a huge, was a huge also Mark Knopfler and Dire Straits fan. And Mark Knopfler wrote the score to the movie Princess Bride. And my father, like I said, loved that movie and everything. So they went to the wedding party. John and Dorothea got married in at the chapel, before. And so they had this big party at the South Street Seaport. My parents were there. And my father, he asked my father, he goes, "You like what you call it, the band, the Dire Straits, and you like that movie, Princess Bride, right?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Just wait a few minutes." So the MC calls John and Dorothea out for their first dance, and Willie DeVille, the guy who sings "Storybook Love," is actually there singing that song to John and Dorothea. My father was just floored, and
Oh my gosh.
yeah, but like it's another one of those special moments of John and my father and their 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 um their togetherness, because they everything they always have those finish each other's sentences and stuff like that. These two guys, for as different as their ages were, they were just thick as thieves, so to speak.
And there's a question I wanted to ask too, kind of leading into this.
Sure.
When John was first learning guitar and kind of getting the craft, starting to play, did your dad think that all this is just going to be like a hobby for him for the rest of his life, or did he see the star that John was going to become?
Took about 2 or 3 months. um you know it was, I'd say, maybe even a little less. He knew. The thing was, and John echoes it a lot when he's interviewed. But the truth of the matter is, my father, since we were friends of the family, my father felt very free to tell him, "Listen, you don't waste my time, man. Go play with the kids. Go play basketball, whatever you want to do." And Johnny kept coming back, kept coming back. He wanted to learn more and more and more. And then when he started saying, "I'm going to get a band together," that was it. That was it. My father knew this is because that's how my father did it. He taught himself, and then he got a band. If any of you um, follow oldies, we'll talk about my dad here a little bit. My dad had a band called the Renegades,
Okay.
and played Palisades Amusement Park. And they had battle of the bands all the time up there. And one year he beat this guy that went there, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe the Renegades beat this guy." Well, that guy ended up being Johnny Maestro in the Brooklyn Bridge. And he was also in a band called the Crescents, in the song 16 Candles, which is a huge song where you hear it at any Sweet 16. That's Johnny Maestro. And my dad's band beat his. So it's one of those cool things from back in the day. But my dad, music was his passion, and it was almost like, and like I said, no disrespect to my father, and I just didn't learn guitar. I was a saxophonist. I played saxophone from age 10. And my brother, he dabbled with a bass guitar. But we also had other things. My brother was also a very good track runner. So we had our hobbies, we did our things. And so guitar wasn't our thing, but we always supported my dad. But that's kind of the thing that John had with my dad was, this was the guy he handed it down to. Then he got Dave, which made it even better. So, I mean, he's got two of these guys that are,
Yeah.
taking over the world, so to speak. So,
Yeah. And like you said earlier, I mean, the odds of teaching one kid
right.
guitar and
Exactly.
becoming this superstar, let alone two. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I,
Dave came down, was it March? In March, they played the House of Blues in Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach, and we went to see Dave and saw him after the show. He looks great. Let me tell you something. The new singer, and I know this is a side note, the new singer of Skid Row is the real deal, everybody. So if you like Skid Row, Eric Gronwall is the man.
oh,
So yeah,
I,
he go ahead there.
no, you go ahead.
Yeah, and he's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. And yeah, we got to see him and Dave after the show. And Dave gave me a big hug. Like I said, I haven't seen John in a few years now. And but yeah, so you know, seeing Dave, and they always talk, everything's about dad. So, it's a big deal. And you know, like I said, the way they honor him is the most important thing for us. And obviously, the biggest honor from either one, and no disrespect to Dave, is AP 95, because that
Yeah.
is it's nationally known The first time we ever saw it was on American Idol, when he was playing. It was the finale of American Idol. He comes on, and I'm like, "Is that?" And then we like had to stop and get close to the TV and see it. And yeah,
In
and
7?
what's that?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt here, but
Yeah.
American Idol in '07 when they did "You Want to Make a Memory."
I did. That's exactly it. Yeah, that was the first time. Yeah, I saw it on your shirt when you came on. That was the first time we ever saw it. Um, I'm going to keep the moment private on how John, how it ended up on the guitar. That's something for John to tell if he ever releases that one day. I hope he does.
I won't say anything, but I think he has kind of talked about it in a
Yes,
few interviews about writing it. Maybe not the full story, and I
right.
won't say
It,
anything. No, you
right. It's a neat little story, and I know John will eventually say the whole thing. And it's cool. But like every time, you see him play on TV or see him in a magazine. I mean, we
yeah,
got a magazine on the on the coffee table over here. It's about John, about a kid from Jersey becoming a world superstar. And in the thing, you open it up, there's a picture, AP '95. So and the diehards know, like
yeah.
just as we talked before, and. So the funny, so like I said, it's a wonderful thing, and I've seen the guitar on TV. I've seen it in magazines. And John came to Charlotte a couple of years, 20, was it
17.
18, 17 or 18? Yeah, the first time. First,
Uh,
it was 13. The first time was 13. Okay,
okay.
yeah, it was Lost Highway show. So I talked to Matt, and he's like, "Yeah, no problem. We'll meet up at the show." So we went to Charlotte. And we also saw him in Raleigh, but the first one was in Charlotte. And there it was. It was right in front of me, and I couldn't touch it. I couldn't touch it. I took pictures of it. I have the actual photo I took that day. It was just larger than life to me, and it was a big moment. And you know, so when we were backstage, Maddie said, it's right there. So, I'm like, no, it's cool. And then, we watched the show. It was a fantastic show as expected. And we left. Then we saw him in Raleigh a couple of years later. And it's, once again, there's the guitar, and that's it. So, and then finally, when as we talked before, This House Is Not for Sale tour. So they're in Charlotte. And we do that. So we're there, and this is where this was, like I was saying, this is the funny part. So Maddie says, here, tag along with this crowd. And it was the fan club.
Yeah.
So and we're in like this special area. We're getting nice little hors d'oeuvres and stuff. And there's big, huge pictures of John and the band. And we're taking pictures. It was
Jackets.
it was just so fun. Oh yeah, he had all that stuff there.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was all neat. So then we go to take the tour backstage, and I had a very dear friend of mine with us. His name is Joe, JJ D'Amato. And so we're there, and it's our family and Joe and his wife, his fiance. And we go to the guitar area underneath the stage. And this is, and the girl goes, these are John's guitars. And now, prior to the tour, Matty had taken us down there because he wanted to he knew how much it meant to me. And he goes, it's your time. And then he, picked it up and he put it off. And I had the strap on, and I held it in my hands. And I never felt it's surreal. It's surreal how I was able to hold that guitar and how much it actually meant to so many, including myself. So we put it back, and then we went back on the tour. So then, sure enough, we take now we're with the whole group downstairs. And the girl, sweetest girl, I don't remember her name, but she's giving the tour. And she's like, this is Richie's, this is this stuff, and this is this stuff. And these are John's guitars. And there it was. And does anybody have any questions? So me being the wise guy I am, I raised my hand. I said, can you tell me what AP '95 stands for on that guitar? And meanwhile, my buddy Joe is behind me, and he's raising his hand like this because he knows. And another couple people out there raised their hands too. And she goes, I honestly don't know. And I said, well, for those who don't know, I said it stands for Al Parinello, and 95 is the year he died. And the reason I know this is because that's my father. And these people were like, like totally floored by it. And I'm like, I just want you to know the next time you do this tour, this little tour underneath, I want you to make sure everybody knows that who that guitar is dedicated to. And that was the only reason I did it. But it was funny. And I said, I didn't mean any disrespect. I said, but now I was able to help you on the next part of the tour. So, it's amazing, that there were people that like, they knew it too. They knew, oh yeah, I know who that is. So
it's funny you mentioned, asking, what AP means, and then doing the backstage tour VIP thing. I'll tell you a funny story. So I do these VIP things every tour. I love doing the backstage tours, and just it's for the diehards to do.
Sure.
And I won a signed seat. So all these VIP bars, they'll do like a little contest and some giveaways.
Sure. Yeah.
You have to answer the questions and stuff. Like only questions or answers that diehards know.
Mm-hmm.
And I won a signed "Because We Can" CD in 2013. Okay. Do you know what the question was?
Give me the question. Let me see if I can get it.
What does AP 95 stand for on John's guitar? That was the question, and obviously I knew it. I was the first one. No, obviously you're in a room of diehard fans, so everyone pretty much did that. But I was the first one to
get your hand right up. Good, excellent.
So
that's awesome. That once again another moment that just means so much to all of us. It's there were so many times where, my father, like I said, he had his own band, and for years did weddings and stuff like that. But, he always made time for Johnny. And like I said, we've seen, I don't know exactly how many times I've seen John play live, and I can't, I don't sometimes associate a tennis court show as a concert, but it really was with the Atlantic City Expressway way back then. The Christmas shows at Count Basie. One of the other great moments that we had happen was an evening with Bon Jovi in the Round.
In 92 for the Faith promo in New York City?
Yeah, my parents could not go. There was a 2-night. I'm sure they filmed that over 2 nights.
Yeah.
My father went the first night. He couldn't go the second night because he actually lost his mom, my grandmother, right around that same time. She was very ill. So we went the second night. And there's actually parts of the video, and it's cool because whoever did the editing did an amazing job. But we sat right by John's feet. My wife and I were sitting right by John's feet. And it's funny because you see us, and then the camera moves, and we're not there anymore because it was filmed over 2 nights. But those are some of the special shows that we got to witness.
Yes.
And now my favorite show that we got to witness, and this was one of the coolest things, was at Six Flags Great Adventure, the Mark G. Edis Arena. They used to have like a mini rodeo in there. It's like this old big dirt floor and everything. But then eventually they changed it, and we're gonna have bands. And we saw John during 7800. He played at Great Adventure. And in the rain, he sang Tokyo Road, and it was still to this moment, I know where he was standing. He was standing on top of the speakers, way up higher than everybody else, and he put on a hell of a show. I mean, I rarely see him not put on a hell of a show, so if at all. But those little snippets, and I miss shows too. The New Year's Eve show at Brendan Byrne Arena back in 87 into 88. I missed it. I was at the Peach Bowl in Georgia with the marching band, but my brother and my father went, and it's amazing. Another great show with John, and if anybody knows it, and I know it's a little before your time there, Big Jer, but the Homecoming show when he played with Skid Row and Billy Squier, and Sam Kinison was the MC. I mean, it was an amazing night. So, but all through it all, we've seen a bunch of things, and he always made time for my father. And, that's what true friendship and, true admiration are about. So, when I hear different things and people, how they're, you know, they love that, they know who my dad is. And like I told you about Jason, he said, I don't have the guitar, but it's here in my heart, and it's just one of those things where it really brings joy to our lives, that how well known and well respected my father was. And it's all, I mean, John's hard work and my father's support is, a match made in heaven.
Wow. Like you said, on behalf of the fandom, we know how monumental your father was to John, and without your dad, John may have never became who he, because John said it many times, as your dad said, if you don't take this seriously, don't
Yeah.
waste my time,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really the pushing factor
Mm-hmm.
of John taking it serious and learning House of the Rising Sun,
Yeah.
and yeah, I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
You mentioned in Eating with Bon Jovi, which is that promo 1992
Yes.
New York City concert. Not many fans had got to see that show, so I have to ask, since you were there, obviously
Mm-hmm.
that concert is pretty monumental in the fandom, because it's just, it was this really their peak of the 90s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that show is just phenomenal, with all the covers that they did, and
Yep.
just
John's
that
short hair. John had very short
yeah.
hair back. Yes.
And just a side note, it's so funny how that was bigger news than Bon Jovi getting back to, quote unquote, getting back together.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
and but what was it like to be at that concert? I
Well,
mean,
it's neat because, we had seen him, we've seen him at Giant Stadium. We've seen him everywhere. And, you know, and my father and mother went the first day, and then, we went the second day, and it was Brooklyn, right? I think it was Queens. It was in Queens. And we went to before we were early, so we went and shot pool somewhere. I remember that. We were just wasting time, and it was me, my brother, and our wives. And like I said, all of a sudden, it's like, we go in there and it's like this little tiny warehouse. That's what it was. It had like baseball bleachers on the side, and those are the ones you can hardly see with the dark. And then there was a stage with 3 steps, and we saw where John's stuff was. Boom, we sat right down, and we talked to him a little bit during the show and stuff like that. You didn't see any of that because it was being recorded, but he it was so unique because yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so it's like nobody ever did that.
yeah,
You know, it was one of those unique things. And obviously, a lot of people, there's another thing with John. Him and Richie invented Unplugged. I mean, a
yep,
lot of people give them the credit, and they did. They were the first ones to do it. And like I said, as much as I love John, and I do, I don't think it was the best Unplugged. I'm an Alice in Chains fan, so I like that one as well too. But John invented it. It was one of those things where he was an innovator in music. He did these different shows, and I mean, the Homecoming was an amazing show. The Catwalk, the riding the cable across to the middle of the stage.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. We were just um, we went to see him not too long ago, and he was walking along the boards, like where the hockey boards would be. And Matt's holding him, so please don't fall. And but he did all these different things. He was in touch with his fans, and it
yep.
was amazing to see all those things transpire throughout his career. And you know, and it's every time think of Pops. And like I was saying to you earlier when we were chatting before the recording, I'm into really heavy music. So a lot of metalcore, a lot of real deep heavy metal. Well, my son and I went to go see. My favorite band is actually called Fit for a King, and there was a band called In Heart's Wake out of Australia. They were like co-headlining this show. It was in Greensboro, North Carolina. Well, In Heart's Wake's about to come on. We're waiting for them, and they set up their stage, and then Living on a Prayer is their opener. Not that they play, but like that their intro song that, like when you go to a concert, you hear that intro song. So Living on, and here are a bunch of 20-something-year-old kids at a heavy metal show, and they knew every single word to the song. They all sang it. I have it on video. It's actually quite amusing. And it just shows you the influence that, John has had over all generations of music. And we like to think that, as we've discussed more and more with this conversation, how much of a part my father had in that creation. So it's pretty cool.
2 questions and I'll let you go.
Sure.
First one is, what was it like for you to be friends? Obviously, you knew the whole family, but to be friends with John, who's just this kid who you went to school with, and you saw him play guitar, and just being just a normal Joe Schmo, quote unquote, and then all of a sudden become the biggest rock, and he was the biggest rock star of the 80s. So what was that like for you to see that transition? And
when we first saw the New Jersey tour, and it was unique because he played Blood on Blood, which is my personal Bon Jovi's favorite song. It's my favorite song by John. And no, I'm not Danny the Medicine Man. I really wish I was, but I'm not. But he sang that live, and I know every word to the song backwards, forwards, up and down. And I'm about to say long-haired rock and roll band, but when he said it, he said, "And me, I'm just a singer." And he paused and he let the crowd get loud, and he goes, "Of the world's biggest rock and roll band." And when that first time we saw him sing that in Jersey, it was amazing. And it was like we were talking about, that was his moment. And he'll always be Johnny to us. When we saw him in Charlotte back in 2018, he came up from behind me, gave me a big hug, and and he'll always be Johnny. He's always been good to, he was great to my mom after my dad passed, and but he'll always be Johnny. I don't see him as, for example, the other night we saw Kenny Chesney. It was my first time seeing Kenny Chesney. And I know I said I listened to a lot of heavy metal band, but Kenny Chesney is the epitome of cool and chill. So, we're at this concert and I'm like giddy. I'm watching Kenny Chesney from like 100 yards away. It didn't matter. I look at him as a superstar. I look at John as John. And because he's always been that way with us. But in a sense of massive pride, I love telling people, yeah, I know John, because he is, such an influence on so many. He is the biggest rock, he still is one of the biggest rock stars in history. And he deserves all these accolades. So, and he does a ton of other stuff too that's really good for us. We don't live in Jersey anymore, but we love the fact of the Soul Kitchens. We think that is one of the greatest things ever. And, we lived in Toms River right before we moved here to North Carolina. And that was one of those things where I'm like, oh, I missed it. But if we ever get back there to visit, I'm definitely going to go to a Soul Kitchen and get a nice meal and honor my father and John at the same time.
It's amazing how down to earth he is. I've met him quite a few times. Obviously not to the level, as you know of him, blah, blah, blah. But you get that sense that he's just down to earth. He doesn't let that fame and fortune get to his head, and he's giving back to his New Jersey.
Yeah, he's a regular guy. The funny thing is he's just a regular guy, and I'm sure there are people that he has to protect himself. He is a celebrity, but at the same time, one-on-one, he's one of the coolest guys you'll ever meet. And yeah.
Yeah.
And so it'll be, it's we had spent so many times with them, and he's been so good to us. So so to answer your question, massive amount of pride, but he'll always be Johnny. So.
Wow. Well, I won't keep it. I'm going to end the recording, then I'll let you go. But I wanted to thank you for reaching out to me on Twitter.
Not a problem.
It was great to chat with you on there, and then be able to have you on this. I know a lot of people are going to really enjoy this chat. And again, I just want to thank you very much for coming on.
You got it, Jim. You got it.
All right, let me end the recording here real quick.